Good morning, Jim Sunderwirth here again. Just excited about what we're studying. It's a wonderful thing to know that the New Testament said what we study in the Old Testament gives us an example of how we're to live and how we're to expect God to work in our lives as He's worked in those in the past. As we've studied the journey of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Joseph and now in Moses and the children of Israel, and what we are learning, and we'll talk about it again, where in Exodus the 4th chapter, he tells, as he goes right into Pharaoh the first time and says, listen, all this can be avoided if you'll just understand this, that I consider Israel as being my son. And if you'll let my son go, then everything will be okay. But if you don't, you've been terrible to my son. If you don't let my son go, then I'll destroy your son. Wow, that's kind of a negative thing. But here's the thing. A lot of times in our lives, God gives us the opportunity to make a choice before we go through a lot of stuff. And if we would just heed His call at the beginning and get the wisdom of God before we make decisions, or let something come into our heart, maybe let someone come in and influence us that would harden our heart, or let some philosophy influence us, we would learn along the way to harden our heart. No, if we would just hear God's voice at the very beginning of any situation that we're questioning, maybe we would be wise to listen to it and miss a lot of situations, a lot of problems. Pharaoh would have missed a lot of problems if he would have heeded Moses that very first encounter. And that's what we need to listen to every day when we have our first encounters with our life. Put God first. Heed His call and respond to Him the way He would have us to, and we would miss so much. Well, here we go. So here, we left you talking about how that Moses, 80 years old, and Aaron, 83 years old, stood before the Pharaoh and said, let my people go, and how God qualified them and called them, and all the aspect of the greatness of God, and greater is He. We ended up with saying, greater is He that's in us than he that's in the world. I think it's John 4:4, and I believe it is. And it said that we know that, and through these whole situations of the plagues, now they're going to go through 10 plagues. Now these plagues are to prove that God is greater than anything that they were worshiping in Egypt. That when it's all said and done, after He had exposed all these gods, God of gods, the God of Israel, would still be standing, and He would still be there. So it's an amazing thing to think about these plagues, that how these plagues, and remember now, as we go through these plagues, you got to remember too that Israel wasn't touched by these plagues. Not one of the plagues came on Israel. That was a great miracle right there, that it would be divided. And the thing is, God blesses His people. He shields us. He helps us, and we're under His wings, as Psalms 90 says. And it's a beautiful thing to understand, and this is a beautiful thing to see. So as we go into this, He said, I want to read this to you. And the Lord said to Moses, see, I have made you as God. We talked about this. And Aaron your brother as your prophet, and you shall speak and command, and Aaron your brother shall tell Pharaoh to send the children of Israel out of the land. God wanted these miracles of showing the greatness of God in compared to the greatness of the gods of Israel was to prove to Israel. Now remember, they had been for many hundreds of years not worshiping God, not being a part and really understanding how great God was. Oh, they remembered some things they were taught, but they hadn't seen God work. And so what's going to happen? They're going to see God work in their behalf. And number two, Pharaoh, who is, you got the sovereign God of the universe, in front of the sovereign God of what they said, God of the earth. I mean, He was supreme. He was sovereign. I mean, they looked at Him as a God. So you got God in front of the God of the earth. And there's no comparison, as we will find out. And then too, I want you to understand this, as we understand this very important thing, this for us as Christians to realize. It said in verse 5, it said, and Pharaoh will not heed. And then it says in verse 5, and the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord. Now look, God is concerned about His children. God's concerned about the sovereign leadership of the earth. But God is also concerned about the Egyptians. He's also concerned about those that don't believe. that he would do miracles in their behalf so that they also would know there's a God. So he wanted, God's concerned about the Egyptian people too. He created them, didn't he? And so he wanted them to know. He wanted Pharaoh to know. And he wanted his children to know. They that know their God shall be strong and do exploits, because greater is he that's in us than he that's in the world. Would you like to pray with me this morning? Let's do that. Father, thank you for these few moments. And I pray that as we go through our day, we'd lift our head and be encouraged to know that Lord, you have us on purpose. And it's not just our own strength at all. It's you in us, the hope of glory. Greater is he that's in us than he that's in the world. Shall we walk in strength? In Christ's name, amen. I'll see you tomorrow.